Just that you do the right thing, the rest doesn't matter. These words were uttered by Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king. He follows the quote up with reinforcement. Just that you do the right thing, the rest doesn't matter. Cold or warm, tired or well-rested, despised or honored. Meaning there's no excuse to not do the right thing, to be truthful, no matter how physically or mentally miserable you are, or if you're tired, or if you'll be harshly judged for your decision. And there are no excuses for not doing the right thing, even on a good day, when you're well-rested and life is treating you well. When that situation presents itself, you must always choose what's right, no matter the cost. Now, it's good to keep in mind that this simple yet powerful quote comes from Marcus Aurelius' personal journal. These were words of advice to himself, his inner thoughts and monologue, written out for future reference. These are reminders to himself to stay true no matter the reward or the consequence. When the Antonine Plague began engulfing the Roman Empire and killing citizens en masse, Marcus made the decision to stay with his people and lead them through crisis, rather than fleeing like many others would have done with his resources. When his general, Avidius Cassius, attempted a coup that not only threatened Marcus's political status, but his life, Marcus chose to publicly forgive him in a speech. He even urged that no harm be brought upon Cassius and hoped that he would not bring harm upon himself, so that Marcus would have the opportunity to show mercy and to forgive him. When it came time to deploy his troops off on military campaigns, Marcus made the impossible decision to leave his wife, his children, and the comforts of the imperial palace behind, to lead his soldiers and his fellow countrymen into battle, understanding that these men had families of their own that they had to leave behind for the greater good of the country as well. As I was scrolling through YouTube the other day, I was intrigued by the title of a video called "The Most Dangerous City in Manhattan." The most dangerous building in Manhattan, by the channel Veritasium. The link to that video is in the description below, and I highly recommend that you guys watch it after you get done with this one. And don't worry, I'll explain how it relates to today's quote by Marcus. Let's leave behind this beautiful New York City library and head to the base of the most dangerous building in the city. As someone who grew up in New Jersey and having recognized the building in the video, I was intrigued to hear more about it. And after hearing this incredible tale, I felt a responsibility to travel to the foot of this skyscraper to share this story with you, so that you can truly absorb the magnitude of this event. And by the end of this, I hope to send you off feeling inspired to face any obstacle on the road ahead. All right, let's set the stage. Year is 1977. These streets would have been filled with Oldsmobiles, Pontiacs, Cadillacs the size of boats. The hit songs of 1977 would have been blaring out the windows of the cassette tapes shoved into the dash. Hit songs of the year, like Dancing Queen, Barracuda, Margaritaville. The marquee on the local movie theater would have read Saturday Night Fever. And in October of 1977, Citicorp opened its doors and the countdown to chaos begins. Now, from first glance, you could see there's something visually unique about this structure. It's on stilts. Now, the man behind this design was William LeMessurier, one of the most distinguished structural engineers in the nation. The reason that this building was designed that way is because the deal made with St. Peter's Church on the corner of the plot over here. The church would remain in place and Citicorp would be built around it. Most large buildings in the city have square or rectangular foundations to work with, but in this case, the designers were met with a unique challenge. Instead of the columns going in the corners of the building, they would move the columns to the center of each side of the building. LeMessurier came up with the structural design for the V-shaped beams that would center the weight load of the building down to the stilt-style foundation. Now, Using this unique structural design made the building lighter and more vulnerable to winds. To compensate for this, LeMessurier and his team came up with what's called a tuned mass damper, which in simple terms is a 400-pound weight on the top of the building, and it runs by computers, and it counteracts the swaying of the building caused by the high winds. So, to sum it up, we have a 59-story skyscraper standing on stilts with a machine on the roof which prevents the building from swaying too much when the wind is hitting either the sides or the faces of the building. And during the 8 months when Citicorp was opened in the fall of 1977 until the following year, all seemed well, until June of 1978, when LeMessurier received a call that would begin a series of events that would come to shape the rest of his life. One day, after leaving a lecture at school, a freshman NJIT student named Lee DeCarolis decided to call LeMessurier to voice concerns that his professor had with the Citicorp building. He pauses for a moment. Did a busy man like William LeMessurier really have the time to entertain the concerns of an 18-year-old college student? But he decides to hear him out, as Lee relays the concerns of his professor of architecture. The concerns being that the offset columns with the V-shaped beams were dangerous, and that whoever designed this didn't know what they were doing. LeMessurier calmly explained the steps that they took to design this, and he politely ended the call. As a pillar of the structural engineering world, surely he knew better than some teenager and his nutty professor. I'm sure his ego tried to convince him that no one should dare question his judgment. But ultimately, something didn't sit right with him. So he followed his gut instinct and decided to call his office in New York City to get some reassurances. One of his lead questions was about the welds that were done to create the V-shaped beam design. And to his horror, he found out that in order to save $250,000, the builder decided to bolt the joints together instead of performing the expensive welding job that he was contracted to do. What? No one notified him of this. Panic began to wash over his body. He immediately started crunching the numbers to double-check the math they used to determine how many bolts would be needed on each joint in order to be strong enough to support the building. The results took his breath away. The math proves that each joint requires 14 bolts, and the builder only used 4 bolts per joint. And then he got hit with another realization. They only accounted for the winds hitting the faces or the sides of the building, not the winds hitting the corners of the building, which are known as quartering winds. Now, at the time, it was normal practice to just calculate for the winds hitting the sides or the faces of the building, because most buildings were rectangular. They would have a standard, solid foundation, as opposed to, you could visually see how the winds hitting the faces of the building would be supported. But quartering winds hitting the corners have nothing supporting them underneath, as you can see here. This nightmare was becoming more real. LeMessurier called a friend who ran a wind lag tunnel and had him perform tests using the calculations from his new discovery. It's important to note that he never let his friend know what this was about. It just seemed like a normal workplace favor. But when the results came back, what seemed like a bad dream quickly became reality. Now, a quick reminder, the tuned mass damper is a giant weight on the roof that counteracts the swaying of the building caused by high winds. Now, knowing this, here's the doomsday scenario. If a storm caused a loss of power to the tuned mass damper, it would only take sustained winds of 68 miles per hour blowing for 5 minutes to snap this building at half at the 30th floor, triggering a domino effects of buildings collapsing onto the next, killing thousands in the process. It's impossible to comprehend the sheer terror that must have rushed over his body. It caused him to flee to his vacation home in Maine, to isolate himself from the world, and to do a comprehensive final review to confirm that this nightmare is indeed true. And unfortunately, after running the numbers over and over and over again, he came to the dark conclusion that there was a 1 in 16 chance that a storm capable of producing those catastrophic winds would hit New York City. The building would fall during LeMessurier's lifetime, possibly as soon as a couple weeks, as hurricane season was soon approaching. Revealing this error to the world could result in bankruptcy from the amount of lawsuits that would be filed against him. His professional career would be over. His name, reputation, slandered forever in the history books. He could end up in prison for life if that building fell, claiming thousands of innocent lives. I can't imagine the apocalyptic scenes of destruction and death that must have been consuming his mind. And the biggest factor to keep in mind is that no one knew about this. His friend at the wind tunnel, he wouldn't say a word because he just assumed it was a normal work project. LeMessurier was the only person on the planet that knew that Citicorp and New York City were doomed. In these events, when life hits you the hardest, when you face your most difficult challenges, this is where your true character is showcased. Like being caught in a rip current in the ocean. If you panic and make irrational decisions, you will die. But if you pause, you process what's the best decision to make, what the right thing to do is, you have a chance of surviving this test. LeMessurier felt the darkness closing in around him. In a later interview, he admitted to contemplating the choice of driving his car at full speed down the main turnpike into the side of a bridge down the road from his house. His suicide would be a tragedy and a mystery to all who knew him, until the day came when Citicorp snapped at its weak point on the 30th floor, forever changing the skyline of Midtown Manhattan, indiscriminately killing thousands of innocent people. The investigation of this event might solve the mystery behind this suicide, or maybe the world would never know. He was responsible for this. Suddenly, he snapped out of it. Suicide? How could he even think of such a thing? It was his job as a human to take responsibility for his mistakes, to deal with the potential consequences, and most importantly, to do the right thing no matter what. So, he immediately began making all the appropriate calls to begin the repair process. And in mid-August of 1978, construction began. Now, to prevent a mass panic, a plan was set in place to make these repairs in secret during the night when the building was closed. The construction crews would go in at night, cut holes in the sheetrock, weld large steel plates on the bolted joints that needed more support, patch the sheetrock up, clean up, and would be gone before the building opened for business in the morning. The citizens who worked in the building had no idea that they were sitting inside of a ticking time bomb. The project was done with the help of city officials, the NYPD, and the Red Cross, who had a 10-block emergency evacuation route in place in case the building collapsed before repairs were completed. And by October 1978, just 1 year after it opened, Citicorp was finally deemed safe. And what happened to our friend, William LeMessurier? Well, when the dust settled and the repairs were done, Citicorp wanted compensation for this mistake. Their original estimate to cover the cost for repairs were $4 to $8 million. LeMessurier spoke with his insurance company, and they agreed to pay $2 million. So he presented that to the Citicorp, and they not only accepted the offer, but they officially announced that LeMessurier's firm was not at fault for the incident, and the case was closed. Surely his insurance premiums would skyrocket after they were forced to make such a large payout, but in their eyes, his immediate action with disregard to his personal reputation prevented one of the worst insurance disasters of all time. And as recognition of his commendable actions, his insurance company lowered his premiums. LeMessurier went on to live a happy life, forever recognized for his bravery in the face of fear. His story is taught in engineering classes around the world as a story of ethics. This was a man who was moments away from the ultimate act of self-harm, a successful, prestigious member of the community who made a mistake at work, but he bravely faced the consequences for his error, and nature rewarded him for it. Stories like this are why I love history and why the promotion of history is so important. It reminds us that we're not so special, that others have faced more difficult challenges and maintained their integrity through it. We can compare the results of people who did the right thing in the face of adversity and those who made the wrong, normally selfish actions, selfish decisions. That's why daily reflection is so important. We need to look back on both the good and the poor decisions that we make every day, making constant adjustments to our behavior so that it becomes muscle memory to respond in a virtuous way. So that when the day comes and a skyscraper in your life is about to collapse, you won't panic. You've practiced every day for this moment. I want to thank each and every one of you for sharing your valuable time with me today and listening to the story. I took this trip out here just to do this story for you guys. And a big shout out to our friend, Mr. William LeMessurier, who unfortunately passed away in 2007. But his name will forever be in the history books because he chose to do the right thing no matter what. something we all hope we're able to do when adversity shows up at our door. Woo! All right, guys, we've come to the end of the episode. Please like, subscribe, ring the bell so you never miss our new episodes. They're posted every Sunday. Join the club, share your stories in the comments, and show support for each other. A lot of positive energy in this club. There are big plans for ahead for this channel, interviews I want to do. The future is bright. Much love and appreciation. Join us next year at the Stoic Social Club.